Oh man, and just like that, we are back, y'all. What is going on? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to a very special edition of the HFWB Podcast Series. This is your host, Clifton Pope. And guess what, y'all? I'm back with another solo edition, and I'm back to continue the Wellness Whisperers series because we just need to continue to find ways to heal ourselves from within. And this is also just a friendly reminder, of course, to tell you the importance of health is wealth, because we're constantly chasing after the next thing. We're constantly focusing on the destination instead of worrying about the journey. And at the same time, we need to focus on just taking care of ourselves, because what is good as the next dollar that we make if we're not taking care of our overall well-being, if we're not taking care of the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and the mental overall state of our overall existence, being ourselves within our self-care practices. So that's kind of the reason why I'm doing the Wellness Whisperer series here in the HFWB podcast series. For those who are listening to the HFWB podcast series for the first time, I thank y'all for taking time out of your productive day, wherever you may be, however you may be listening to listen to another episode of the HFWB podcast series. I want to give a shout out to all of the subscribers I have. I want to give a shout out to everybody who has downloaded and streamed an episode of the HFWB podcast series, because I do this for you, the people. Y'all continue to hit that follow and subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And at the same time, y'all continue to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel at Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business. That's one S on the business, then 8726 on the official YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. That way we can continue to grow the HFWB community one day at a time, one step at a time. And I have to acknowledge this particular day based on the journey of fasting that I'm currently on to kick things off on this brand new edition of the HFWB podcast series. Happy Yom Kippur Day to everyone who celebrates that holiday, especially in the Judaism religion. And it kind of ties into like the importance of why fasting has been around for centuries, because for those who don't know what the main purpose of Yom Kippur is, it's basically the purpose of it is to affect individual and collective purification by the practice of forgiveness of the sins of others, and by sincere repentance for one's own sins against God, which goes to show you, if you haven't been paying attention to the Wellness Whisperer series and previous episodes of the HFWB podcast series, you can basically benefit from fasting overall from basically the spiritual realm more so than anything, because it's opening up so many doors of opportunities for spiritual reflection, spiritual enlightenment, and it also allows you the opportunity to get closer to God one day at a time, one step at a time, for sure. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for all my people who are listening to the HFWB podcast series, as far as celebrating the holiday of Yom Kippur, which is actually going to be on tomorrow's date, October the 12th, 2024, as this today is, of course, October the 11th, 2024. So by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be the passing day of the holiday of Yom Kippur will pretty much basically pass already. But overall, it just ties into the exact reason on why we need to continue to fast for an overall spiritual growth, because people fast for spiritual reasons. I mean, I myself am fasting for spiritual reasons, to increase that spiritual awareness, that spiritual connection, and at the same time provide time for introspection and spiritual reflection, just like I was alluding to earlier. And at the same time, it's a tradition. It's a communal practice that fosters a sense of community and shared tradition. So that's kind of how you could tie in Yom Kippur as well. And what a better way to practice forgiving your own sins and the sins of others by basically practicing the art of fasting, So I wanted to kind of throw that out there as far as to kick things off for the HFWB podcast series on this Wellness Whisperer edition. Happy Yom Kippur Day to everyone who celebrates it. And also for those who celebrate it wholeheartedly, basically No food, no drink, no sex, no anointing the body with oil, no wearing leather shoes, all of those things. That's basically what is prohibited as far as within the 5 rules of Yom Kippur based on the research that I've done. And that usually begins at sundown. I'll be completely honest. I respect the tradition. I respect the tradition and I will acknowledge the tradition, but that's maybe a little bit too extreme for me as I'm, still new to the fasting world myself, as I myself have been doing it for maybe a little over a month. So it's kind of like baby steps to a certain degree. You got to crawl before you walk. As a matter of fact, I just broke another 36-hour water fast myself just recently, and I can honestly say that my body is getting so used to it. And plus, when you're constantly on the go, being productive, having to be in one place after another, having one meeting after another, you tend to even forget about the fact that you're even fasting to begin with. I can honestly say this week's 36-hour water fast have definitely been the quickest fast I could say that I've been through. And it's definitely been the most productive one. I could say that because there were times throughout my 36-hour water fast where I was even forgetting that I was fasting to begin with. But overall, I know last week I talked about the different types of fasting and everything like that, where I was touching a little bit on the intermittent fasting and all that. And for those who want a little bit of an understanding on how that you can approach intermittent fasting, go back and listen to episode 156 of the HFWB Podcast Series as the Wellness Whisperer continues. I want to kind of focus on a different type of fasting in this particular episode. I kind of want to touch on probably the easiest and most convenient form of fasting that you can do to kind of get yourself into it a little bit. I would start off with, time restricted eating, or the TRE method, the fasting. And for those who are wondering what time restricted eating is, it's basically a dietary approach, right? That involves eating during the day, usually an 8 to 12 hour window, and fasting at night. This method, it basically keeps the fasting period relatively short, which makes it a more manageable option for people. So basically, by just breaking all that down, you basically can eat pretty much your usual breakfast, your usual lunch, your usual dinner. But at the same time, you got to cut off eating as early as possible, as far as, basically when the sun rises, you could eat your normal breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But once that sun sets and it becomes officially nighttime, you cut off all kinds of consuming any kind of hard food within itself, right? Because the TRE eating window is typically set to the body's circadian rhythm, because research suggests that this is when the body absorbs the most nutrients. So basically, you're eating in tune with your body's circadian rhythm and basically timing it right to where your body can absorb the right amount of nutrients at the right amount of time. Now, syncing your eating patterns to your circadian rhythm is also believed to enhance metabolic health and function while reducing the risk of developing certain diseases. Again, benefits of time-restricted eating. It has a number of health benefits, and there's a lot of science behind this, to where I want to give a special shout out to lifemd.com, to where you can look up all this information yourself if you don't believe me on this. But I will say this: the benefits of time-restricted eating, it has a number of health benefits for the body, like improved circadian rhythm. As in other words, eating during the day and fasting at night may help to improve hormone regulation, quality of sleep, and your overall well-being. It does help out with weight loss. I've said this before. For those who are listening to the HFWB Podcast Series, the Wellness Whisperer Series, and have been following it diligently, fasting can help out with weight loss, especially if you restrict the times during which you eat. During the times that you eat, well, it can lead to an overall natural calorie deficit, which helps you lose weight. So basically, if you keep track of the things that you eat on a regular basis and you keep track of the amount of calories that you're putting in, the more you do that, the more you can decrease the amount of calories that you put inside your body, and the more likely you will lose the weight versus gaining the weight. And at the same time, a good benefit to know about time-restricted eating is that it's a simple Implementation, where it's relatively easy to incorporate into your daily life because it does not require any drastic changes in eating habits. The fasting periods are also much shorter and easier to adapt to different lifestyles. So again, it's like what I've been talking about with everything in regards to fasting. You got to crawl before you walk. If you feel like the intermittent fasting that I was talking about in episode 156 is too much for you and you feel like you'll have your doubts about it, how about this? Approach it with the sun up, sun down method. As soon as the sun rises, you could literally break your fast, which begins at sundown and concludes at sun up, which is where the term breakfast comes in handy. Remember, like I said in episode 156, we're literally breaking our fast the moment the sun rises. So you could just eat breakfast like the moment the sun rises, which is usually like between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., depending on which part of the time zone that you're in, or so to speak. And then at the same time, once you do that, you eat your regular breakfast, your regular lunch. Try to eat your breakfast, within the first couple of hours, no later than 10 a.m. Try to eat your lunch no later than 2 p.m. and try to eat your dinner no later than 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. That's a good example of a time-restricted eating window because that aligns not only with the sun up, sun down method, but it also aligns with your body's circadian rhythm where, again, you could absorb the most of the nutrients during the day and you could fast during the night. That way you're fasting already for about a good 8 to 12 hour ratio. So it's in a way borderline intermittent fasting, but it's a more simpler version. It's much more shorter. It's much more easier for people to adapt to, for those who are still on the fences on whether they want to fast or not. My point is we need to start fasting on a weekly basis, at least once a week, whether it's time restricted eating, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's extended fasts, whether you're doing fasts for longer than 24 hours or up to maybe 48 hours, 72 hours, maybe even a week or two, if anything, which I will get into the benefits as far as how you can benefit off of extended fasting within the next episode as well. So we'll definitely go into that a little bit more in details. But yes, for those who are still on the fences about whether they want to fast, remember, time-restricted eating is probably the most simplest option that you can do, almost just as simple as intermittent fasting. So don't forget about that, y'all, because it involves eating during the day, which is usually an 8 to 12 hour window, and fasting at night. So basically, the moment the sun rises, eat your normal meals, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whether it's just a small portion of a breakfast, a big lunch, and a big dinner. It doesn't matter how you kind of do it. As long as you get all your food in your system from the moment the sun rises to the moment the sun sets. The moment that sun sets, that's where you begin your fasting. And then you repeat that process over and over and over again. Give it a try for like a week or two, see how your body reacts to it. And of course, get the necessary medical consultation from your doctor, depending on your overall pre-existing health conditions, so it doesn't interfere with any of those things, of course. And then just develop a routine habit of doing that. And I guarantee you it's going to make a little bit more of a difference to where you can continue to love yourself, you can understand yourself, and at the same time, you can have that necessary compassion being built up to where you can basically show that same amount of love to others. And it's actually perfect that I mentioned all of those things, as a matter of fact, because it actually allows me to segue into the next topic that I'm about to talk about, which is in regards to breaking down the chakra system, like we've been doing in the last few episodes of the HFWB Podcast Series when it comes to the overall Wellness Whisperer series. The last episode, I know I talked about the solar plexus chakra as far as, understanding yourself and your personal willpower and all that. And if you need a quick review on how that goes, again, go check out episode 156. That way we're not skipping any steps here on the Wellness Whisperer series, because I want to take y'all on a journey and take y'all on a ride, but I want to make sure that we're up to par and up to speed and we're up to date as much as possible. So overall, with our heart chakras and everything, I want to talk a little bit about the heart chakra, basically where that is located. Obviously, it's located in the center of the chest near your heart. And the associated aspects with the heart chakra is basically love, compassion, and relationships, which is why the main color of the heart chakra is green versus it being red. Because most people would think that the heart chakra is red because that's how it's pictured within anatomy and physiology and when you describe the overall body system. But the reason that the heart chakra is green because it's so much more than just love. It's compassion, it's relationships, it governs our ability to love ourselves and others. And when you feel balanced, when your heart chakra is balanced right, it basically allows you to feel love, it allows you to feel compassion, it allows you to feel empathy. And at the same time, when your heart chakra is basically in balance, you feel a lot more lonely, you feel a lot more bitter, and at the same time, you have some respiratory problems that you have to address as well. So there are plenty of ways to make sure, like how you can make sure that your heart chakra is still in balance, because it does deal with the respiratory system, it does deal with the circulatory system, it deals with the immune system. And at the same time, there's so many ways on how you can tap into your heart chakra. As a matter of fact, here's one way on how you could tap into that heart chakra. You can since the heart chakra is green, you got to get your green foods in you, right? From a nutrition standpoint, you can get your spinaches in, you can get your kales in, any kind of green fruit that you can think of, like green apples, limes for that citrus flavor, right? You could do green bell peppers, cucumbers, basically any fruit or vegetable that is green. That is what you need to put into your body on a regular basis. That way you can make sure that heart chakra is balanced. That's why most doctors, if not all doctors, will probably recommend to their patients to drink green drinks whenever they have respiratory issues or circulatory issues, or if they're that way they can flush out their immune system and clean all of that out, or better yet, their lymphatic system as well. You drink green drinks that consist of a lot of spinach, kale, celery, cucumber, green apples, cilantro, parsley, all of those type of things, bell peppers, and again, green apples. Kiwi is another good example of a green fruit. Any kind of green fruit and vegetables from a nutrition standpoint, that is how you can literally balance out your chakra system from a nutrition standpoint. You could also use, like, for instance, here's a good way you could tap into your heart chakra. You can do, for all my yogis out there, you could do poses like the locust pose. You can do the camel pose, where you're basically on your knees and you're extending your chest out here, and your hands are basically grabbing the top of your heels, and you're kind of folded back like this. For those who are watching on YouTube, notice how I'm opening up my chest, which is exposing the center of where the heart chakra is located. That's a way you can tap into your overall heart chakra and balance it out a little bit. And at the same time, another way you can tap into your heart chakra, through the power of meditation, through the power of breath work, obviously, because a lot of people don't notice the element that is associated most with the heart chakra is air. And a lot of people don't notice is that air is where we get majority of our energy from. Most people think that we get our energy from movement or food, and rightfully so, we do get our energy from that. But the most important factor of where we get our energy from is of course our air, because we're breathing in the oxygen and we're exhaling the carbon dioxide, right? So when we do all of those things, we're opening up not only our lung capacity, we're basically opening up our heart to where it could circulate the oxygen and carbon dioxide within our body. And at the same time, when you do factor in all those things, and then of course you engage your abdominal region while you're focusing on your breath work, you're also opening up your transverse abdominis, your diaphragm, your pelvic floor, your multifidus. When you're basically engaging in your breath work more so than ever, it can be a game changer as far as just learning how to heal yourself from within. And trust me, I'll go into breath work and all of that as far as in the later episodes of the HFWB podcast series, as this Wellness Whisperer series continues, as we'll tackle the importance of breath work from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint, because that's what the Wellness Whisperer series is all about. We're going to continue to do that. But overall, back to the heart chakra. So overall, the best way you could tap into your heart chakra, you could literally tap into it through the power of meditation. You can literally tap into it by listening to the frequency associated with the heart chakra, which is 639 HZ frequency. You can literally type this in on YouTube and it will come up. I promise you that, because I myself meditate to that frequency at least twice a week. So that's something, if you didn't know, now you know. And while you're meditating to that frequency, sitting nice, calm, cool, and collected, relaxed, back straight, nice, tall, and upright, drawing your belly button into your spine. That way you're engaging your core, sitting down nice and relaxed, whether it's on your bed, edge of your bed, your couch, on a yoga mat, whatever your preference is. And you're focusing on your breathing in through your nose for 3 seconds, holding your belly button into the spine, holding that breath for a few seconds, and exhale slowly for 3 seconds. And once you do all those things in a nice little repetitive rhythm, get a nice little rhythm going within that, right? I want you to add these affirmations into that meditation cycle while you're listening to the 639 HZ frequency. I want you to tell yourself these 3 affirmations, y'all. I am worthy of love. I am open to giving and receiving love. I love myself unconditionally. I'll say that again. I am worthy of love. I am open to giving and receiving love. And I love myself unconditionally. You tell yourself those 3 affirmations over and over again while you're tapping into that breath cycle of 3-second inhales, 3-second hold of the breath, and 3-second exhales. That way you could engage your abdominal region. You can open up your lungs to where you can increase your lung capacity. All of those things factored in together, it's going to add years to your life versus taking away years from your life. There's so many scientific studies that prove that, as far as just the breath work aspect alone. And again, I'm going to dive into all of those things in future episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, because I don't know if you realize this or not. I mean, when COVID was going on, technically it still is kind of going on to a certain degree, but when it was at its worst, do you want to know what one of the main symptoms of COVID-19 was, just in case if you forgot and you need a friendly reminder? It was shortness of breath. And the reason why it was shortness of breath, because 9 times out of 10, people were breathing improperly, if not breathing incorrectly altogether. So that's one way we could tap into our heart chakra, to where we can open up our respiratory system, open up our circulatory system, strengthen our immune system or lymphatic system, for if you want to get fancier with the terms. But regardless, you got to get your green fruits, your green vegetables in you from a nutrition standpoint. You got to meditate to the sound frequency and practice your breath work to that sound frequency, and let the sound healing take its toll. I can't stress that enough, because God is love, God is spirit, and God is frequency. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. God is love, God is spirit, and God is frequency. So what a better way to tap into your heart chakra by tapping into the 639 HZ frequency. That way you can, of course, open up your heart. That way you can open up your lungs. That way you can breathe properly. That way you can find ways to continue to love yourself. That way you can take that same love and continue to love other people. That way you could express compassion, express empathy, and we can kill the bitterness. We can kill the loneliness, and at the same time we can eliminate all those respiratory problems and all those circulatory problems like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and we could put it in the insulin resistance from a natural standpoint. Because again, God is love, God is spirit, and God is frequency, which is why we need to tap into our chakra system, especially our heart chakra, more so than anything, because it starts with the heart. That's literally the first thing that is formed within every human being that is being born inside the woman's womb, the uterus and everything. The heart forms, and then everything forms around the heart from there. That's pretty much how that goes every single time when it comes to that. But overall, I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit as far as the heart chakra within our chakra system series that we're also doing, as we're going to continue to probably revisit all the chakra systems more so than ever within the Wellness Whisperer series going forward, and especially with the times that we're in more so than anything. But I wanted to kind of make a little bit of a quick transition and continue on with everything that I've been talking about in the latest edition of my Bible talk that I've been doing, showcasing the book of Genesis and everything. And within the last episode, I was talking about, the Tower of Babel and how it was humanity's attempt to build a tower to the heavens, and where God introduced multiple languages, scattering people across the earth, basically introducing diversity within the world so many centuries ago. I kind of want to talk about a little bit of the covenant a little bit. The concept of the covenant, right, where they talk about that, and it was introduced in the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible. Basically, the covenant is basically a connection between God and humanity. You can ask all the great prophets from the book of Genesis, and you can research all of them, and they'll know exactly what the covenant means. You can go back as far as Noah and Abraham to where they talk about the covenant. But basically, the covenant, to kind of sum it up a little bit more in details, it demonstrates the importance of faith and obedience to God's will, right? That's as straightforward as it can get. It also highlights God's promises and blessings across generations. As a matter of fact, it showcases God's control and ultimate plan for creation and humanity. That's basically what the covenant is pretty much all about from the get-go. And if you want to take it even a little bit deeper, if you really think about it, the Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, was basically in a way a part of Genesis, because he was trying to tell us the whole exact time, and he was trying to explain that to all the prophets then, from Adam and Eve to Abraham to Jacob, Isaac, Joseph, Noah, all of those people. He was basically trying to explain that I was the word of God creating the heavens and the earth, therefore establishing that covenant that we so seek every time whenever we explore the book of Genesis within the Holy Bible. So if anything, we need to get back to appreciating the covenant a lot more so than ever, especially with the times that we are in, because that will allow us to, trace our roots back and our ancestry back to the Israelites, who were basically the chosen people within the Bible by God, from starting back in the book of Genesis. And it basically explains that going into Exodus and Leviticus and so on and so forth, which we'll definitely get into in later episodes of the HFWB Podcast Series as well. But to kind of break everything down as far as the covenant and everything, that's pretty much what it is. It's the connection between God and humanity, right? It's the connection between faith and obedience, demonstrating the importance of faith and obedience to God's will. It's the importance of highlighting the promises that God keeps and the blessings that will be spread across generation after generation after generation. I mean, look at what happened with everybody from Abraham to the birth of Isaac to, to Jacob's being born, and going all the way back to, Joseph's story on how he was able to reunite with his family in Egypt, setting the stages for Exodus, which we'll eventually get into and kind of discover a little bit more in details. So that's kind of like me kind of summarizing up Genesis a little bit in a nutshell as far as what the book of Genesis is all about. And if you don't believe me, you need to get in touch with your Holy Bible and you need to read the book of Genesis from yourself. That way you can get a better understanding of it. But to basically summarize the book of Genesis before we move on to the book of Exodus within the Holy Bible, within the next episode of the Wellness Whisperer series, to kind of summarize the book of Genesis for those who are listening. It's a foundational text, and it introduces key theological concepts and narratives central to the Judeo-Christian faith. And obviously, like I've mentioned in previous episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series, which you can go back and listen to kind of get a little bit more entails on how I break it down. And at the same time, do the readings yourself. Read the book of Genesis from start to finish because it covers the creation of the world. It covers the early history of humanity and how it all started. And it talks about the stories of the patriarchs from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joseph, all of those people that I just mentioned, Adam and Eve, all of them. And it culminates to the migration of Jacob's family into Egypt, which kind of sets the stage for Exodus, which is the next book, the second book in the Bible after the book of Genesis. So we'll get into a little bit more of how the stage was set for Exodus within the next episode of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series. I wanted to kind of close things out like I normally close things out with a nice popular healing quote to try to help you get through the week, not only the end of the week, but start the brand new week fresh. And I kind of found a nice little inspirational quote that's pretty simple, straightforward, and right to the point. And it's by Mr. Dean Ornish, where he quotes, "Awareness is the first step in healing." Man, that is such a powerful statement within itself. Just let that sink in. Awareness is the first step in healing. As in other words, in order to realize that you need to heal yourself from within and that you need to grow from the pain, the suffering, the trauma, the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, depression, whatever form of disorder that you may be battling, you first need to be aware of what's going on within yourself. Because if you're not aware about what's going on, what the root cause is, where all this is stemming from to begin with, you're never going to be aware of what's going on to begin with. And that's very true. And I'm glad that Dean Ornish, shout out to him, basically said that quote, because that's basically the truth, simple, straightforward, straight to the point. In order to heal yourself from within, in order to heal others, you have to be aware that you yourself need healing. And at the same time, once you realize that you need healing, and once you heal yourself from within, you could take that next step in awareness and let people know that, hey, you need to heal yourself from within as well, giving them that sign of awareness. That way they can look at themselves in the mirror and take the necessary steps properly to, of course, begin that healing journey for themselves, to where they can also learn how to grow through what they go through, also learn how to find room for improvement and learn from their mistakes, and at the same time continue to evolve from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual standpoint, to where you can be the best version of yourself that you can be, not only for yourself, but for everybody who loves and cares about you and who supports you the most, whether it's your parents, whether it's your family, whether it's your closest friends, whether it's a mentor, whether it's your children, for all the parents out there, or if it's your significant other one, for those who are in relationships and who are married, etc. You have to do this for yourself. That way, everyone else around you can reap the benefits of it. And it just goes down to just, loving yourself, because again, God is love, God is spirit, and God is frequency. I can't say that enough. And once you realize those things and you're aware that you've been taken over by the wickedness, and you have the ability to heal yourself from the wickedness and redeem yourself from the original sin that you've been suffering from, that's been set in stone by Adam and Eve. once you take that first step and realize that, hey, there's something not right with me, I need to search from within to figure out what is wrong. That way I can correct it for the greater good of everyone around me and most importantly, myself. You basically have taken the first step towards healing yourself from within. Hence, awareness is the first step in healing. Thank you, Dean Ornish, for that wonderful quote. And that's a great way to end another episode of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series. And again, the Wellness Whisperer is all about providing you tips, tricks, and resource, whether it's from a physical standpoint, mental standpoint, emotional standpoint, and spiritual standpoint. I like to call the four corners that helps square things away on basically growing through what you go through, finding room for improvement, learning from the mistakes that we make, and continuing to evolve from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint to where you can be the best version of yourself that you can be every single day. Every single time, no matter what, you will shine bright given the right lighting. Because remember, awareness is the first step in healing. Once you're aware that you need to heal, the rest will take care of itself. But with that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to another edition of the HFWB Podcast Series. The Wellness Whisperer series continues on. I want to thank y'all for taking time out of your productive schedules once again, wherever you may be, however you may be listening to an episode of the HFWB Podcast Series, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or whatever your podcast platform may be. Hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, and be sure to download and stream not only this episode, but all episodes of the HFWB Podcast Series. That way you can learn something new and learn something different based on anyone's story, based on my story, and based on the information and resources provided not only from myself, but from any guest who I have on the HFWB Podcast Series. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Health Fitness Wealth Business 8726. That way we can grow the HFWB community on YouTube. Be sure to visit the website, healthfitnesswealthbusiness.com/CP. Be sure to follow me on Facebook at Clifton Pope or Health Fitness Wealth Business, or both for that matter. Continue to follow me on Instagram at cpope_44. Follow me on TikTok at healthfwealthb.cp. And oh, by the way, also, quick announcement in regards to Health Fitness Wealth Business. Y'all be sure to be on the lookout. My next book, Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, the trilogy to my personal development, self-help, tell all book series, which is the follow-up to What's Wealth Without Work and A Dollar and a Vision, both which you can get on Amazon.com. Or for those listening here in Corpus Christi, Texas, y'all can go by Black Cat Bookstores on 1316 South Staples Street, to where you can get yourself a copy, and make sure you buy a copy and notify me that you do. That way I could sign it for you personally with a very personal message just for you, the people who make a purchase every single time. But anyways, Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, my next book that I plan on self-publishing. It will be available on Amazon.com by October the 30th, 2024, and it will be available at Black Cat bookstores very, very soon to follow, as I plan on putting together a book signing for that. A date is to be determined on that, but it more than likely will be in early mid-November, right before Thanksgiving for sure. So be on the lookout for that. And at the same time, for everyone who's listening in Corpus Christi, Texas, Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, Mission of Mercy is the place to be for the first annual health literacy event. That's 2421 Ayer Street here in Corpus Christi, Texas. Go check out Mission of Mercy on that day, as myself, a couple of other health professionals in the local community. We're going to get together and we're going to raise awareness on health literacy. That way we can inform everyone in the community on how they can make more informed health decisions as far as building that strong relationship between the patient and the provider, to where everybody's on the same page and we're on the same mission as far as encouraging healthier habits with a balance of conventional medicine and a balance of natural living, healing, and a holistic approach. But with that being said, y'all, I thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the HFWB Podcast Series. And I encourage everybody to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. And until next time, peace, love, and positive vibrations, y'all.